and welcome to the Film Ireland podcast. I'm Gemma Creagh and I'm chatting with writer Eugene O Brien about his new Irish language film Tarrac. Thank you so much for chatting with us.
Thanks a million. Yeah, great to be here.
It's great to have you. It's great to have such a beautiful female-led action sports film set in Kerry in such a gorgeous location. Can you tell me about how you created this project, how you guys got this across the line?
Well, it was part of the Cine4 scheme, which is brilliant because there's great momentum about the scheme. You know what I mean? You put an idea in, they come back to you pretty quickly. You get down to a short list, they give you some money, you go and write the script, you go back in, and then they pick two, I think it was, for the year. So you know, you're in business pretty quickly, which means it's just great momentum to the script and to the project. And I suppose we started off with the character of Bear, which is the father, is the fisherman, the gruff, rough and ready, might have had a problem with drinking, kind of all unreconstructed male, you know. And he was a character I had not floating around for a while. So we had him and we had his daughter and it was all of that. But it was really about him, his story. And then we started to get more interested in the daughter, and the film then slowly began to become about her, and very much he was a secondary character, but it was really about her journey and her kind of trauma and grief. And like all these things, you just have an idea and you keep myself and Clíona Ní Bhuachalla, the producer, was also the story editor. We get in a room, we drive ourselves mad for 5 hours, back and forth. I go write a treatment, come back, and it's just the hard yards. And we did a lot of development on the script. Once we got we got the green light, the script changed quite a lot, actually. And we honed it down. We had a lot more plot and a lot more melodrama and a lot more backstory. And we gradually whittled it away until it became what it was. And we're very glad. And actually COVID helped in that because we couldn't shoot for about a year and a half because of COVID. We didn't take the leap. Some projects did. They went into it. We said, no, it's too scary. Yeah. So although the COVID was still in operation when we shot in 2021, 2 years ago, we all had to get the jabs every morning, do the whole thing, get the test every morning. But the COVID gave us opportunity to really look at the film, to really look at the writing, and that always pays off. The amount of crying you have to do when you go back to rewriting again and again. And we Leslie McCain and the film board was very helpful with that. So that was it. And somehow we got to Kerry this time 2 years ago on the wilds of Ballyfrether, which is, next stop America, where Ryan's daughter was shot, and Star Wars across the way. And we were in that kind of neck of the woods, staying in a hotel. Everyone was staying in the one hotel, which usually closes for the winter, and that was it. Yeah.
And tell me about developing a character like a strong sportswoman. She's so driven. She's processing the loss of her mum, but has been sort of avoiding it until now. Where did she sort of come from, or how did she sort of spin off from the character of Bear? Like, was it just? It felt like an organic step to take, or was it getting two worlds to collide?
Yeah, it was the first thing was, I suppose, I start thinking of the collateral damage of this man Bear, who's the great kind of colourful Irish archetype, the bull. It's that kind of the field, like he's that kind of guy. But then to think of what's the damage of that when someone doesn't take care of you, someone isn't minding you, in terms of the daughter, and how does someone cope with that? And then if they don't cope with it, they park it and they become very successful, and they want to please and they want to be the good girl who does well. And that was the idea then. She's done this for so long, and in original drafts, we had the two of them very fighting with each other. up front, like they were very snippy with each other. And we said, they've worked. What's more sad is that they've worked a way out of not talking about the elephant in the room. So they just exist. And they exist, and this has been going on for years. No one says anything until this is why we're here for our story, until it explodes. And the reason it kind of explodes is that something opens up in her through getting back into the sea and getting back into the boat. And also something opens up in her in terms of having to share her life with these other three women that are in the boat with her, and having to really trust them. I think she has a problem with trust. So she has to grow to trust these women because they want her in this race. And I think that, really, and memories of her mother, because her mother was very closely associated with the boat. So I think all of that is, it allows this great, she can't run away from her trauma anymore, essentially. Do you know what I mean? Without giving too much away. So that was it, really. And the big challenge was to marry the sports movie with the family drama. Do you know what I mean? That was a thing that took a while. How do we get the two of those to flow and to work? And we kind of hit upon something then, which I won't tell you what it is, because you'll see the film, that hopefully that does that. You know what I mean? That brings the two of them right together. And that was the big challenge of crafting the story.
So you've worked with Declan before, and that's a relationship that you guys had already established, a creative sort of shorthand, maybe from.
Yes, Ms. Declan had been working since about 2004, because he was brought in to direct the first 3 episodes of Pure Mule, this TV show that we did, wrote. Charlie McCarthy did the other 3, but Declan kind of was in. And then we did a 2-part follow-up of Pure Mule in 2009, and he directed that. And then he directed a film called Eden, which is from a play of mine, adapted from a play of mine. And then we made a kind of a comedy thing with Pat Short called The Flag. And we've also had loads of other things that haven't quite seen the light of day. So we've been working together a lot, and we have a new script together that we're very, very hopeful for, that we really like. So yeah, it's an ongoing thing. We're kind of the two lads from Offaly, So so we took a detour to Kerry this time, but we're actually back in Offaly for the next one. We just have a really good working relationship, very good shorthand. We can say anything to each other, same kind of sensibility, it works,
And tell me a little bit about how to put together an application for Cine 4, because it is one of the great schemes where it isn't a huge budget film, and again, this goes very far because you've created such a rich visual story. I mean, Kerry and the rowing itself really lends itself to some very cinematic scenes. But tell me a little bit about how you guys put together an application. Is it yourself and Declan are a unit, you work on the script and then you submit and then you go through that process? Or is it, you put together an idea for this? Like, do you go in with something kind of half fully formed, develop it under the scheme and then get a talent attached?
Well, this was very much, we had been talking to this producer, Clíona Ní Bhuachalla, and Clíona had, we'd been talking for a few years about a project that we could all do together, and then this scheme came up, and Clíona is a native speaker, so she kind of provides the Gael in the Gael Goree, and she was able to do all that. So she was the one who came up with the idea of the world of the Navogues, because she spends a lot of time down in Kerry in that part of the world. It's this amazing world of Navogue rowing, this boat rowing. It's fantastic. So that was that, and then I had the character of Bear, and then we developed the story. So the 3 of us developed the story together, and very, very much Clíona and myself did a lot of that, and then we bring Declan in, and it was that. And then Clíona, she had the fantastic task that everyone loves of trying to fill out the forms and do all the applications, which I thankfully don't have to do. So that was it. And
I'm sure you have to do a few synopses. I'm sure you have to do a few synopses and writer's
Oh God, we should
notes
do
and
all of
all.
that. Yeah.
You
Synopsis
never,
and
they're
treatment
so
and
long.
until you cry, until you never want to see it again. But in terms of just the technical thing of having to get it in, and it's quite a complicated scheme. Like there's a lot of moving parts to it because the VAI are involved in the whole. It's a whole thing, but it's a great scheme. And as I say, the great thing about it is that it moves quickly. Unlike other things, because there's not as many, because it's Irish language, there isn't as many people you have to try and deal with. So yeah, so that was it really.
Wonderful. And tell me about, even like, I know as a writer traditionally isn't, but again, this seems like something that you guys had a very tight creative relationship between the three
Yeah.
kind of lead roles, which is brilliant, but can be quite unusual sometimes. Were you involved with the casting? Do you guys get a say in, getting Kelly and Lorcan in the mix to, like testing them? Would you be in the room? Would you be on set?
Yes. I kind of would. I was in and all that, really. I mean, it's down to Declan, really, Clíona more, but I'd be in the room. I was at auditions. I was in another room watching the auditions rather than having too many people. But yeah, no, I would put I would put my vote as to who we want, and we were so lucky with who we got. Because it's hard to cast sometimes. It's it's a more limited pool of people because of the Irish language, and so Kelly came in and she was amazing. She was brilliant and very committed and physically so committed to the rowing. I mean, all of the girls were extraordinary in the boat. I mean, you see in the film, we only use doubles a couple of times. You see them; they are absolutely rowing like it's unbelievable. They're only about 5 or 6 weeks to kind of train in. And Kelly's, just brings a great emotional intensity to the part. And there was a great sense of camaraderie because the big thing we wanted to get was this camaraderie between women and this great moment for women's sport. This summer was such an extraordinary kind of summer for women's sport. So we wanted to kind of capture that and capture the infighting when you get, women together. It can get, no more than men in a different energy can be difficult. So, and how people can overcome that and learn to work together and really bond with each other. We really want to get that across, and the cast did that so well. And then we had an actor called Cillian Ní Bhuachalla, who's a very talented guy who I always had in mind. I was the one who suggested him. He was always in my mind to play the character of Noli. And the others then, Rachel Feeney, I didn't really know at all. She's just kind of she was in Rada and came out and did bits and pieces. She's a smaller part in Belfast, and but she's fantastic. And Kate Finegan's brilliant. Again, we didn't really know of her, and just she came across on it was all Zoom auditions, a lot of it, which was very difficult to cast from Zoom. So, lucky Kelly, when she first came, she was able to come into the room and she read and was absolutely brilliant. And Kate Cailín then is, of course, has been in many Irish language films, including on Colin Ciúin. She's fantastic in this film.
And what are the things that you guys would have been on the lookout for when it comes to, say, picking specific people for roles? Because I know, like Lorcan, he's actually surprisingly warm for that type of character for Bear. Like it's an interesting sort of thing. So I'm just kind of wondering, like, as a writer, and I think it's probably different to theatre where you kind of get to externalize so much of people's inner thoughts, and you are left to like the dialogue, which is it was a little bit more sparse, and then you don't even fully get to pick it as if you have to translate it as well. Like it's sort of like slightly out of your control a little bit. I'm just curious, like, how do you guys go about, going, okay, these traits are really important? Like, do you go, we're looking for someone specifically with, this energy or this physicality, or like, do you guys sit down and have big, long discussions and try and elicit that from your actors as well when you're, or like see it in them?
Yeah, no, it's good. But for Bear, I particularly had things that we wanted from someone, and we had a list, and then when Lorcan came in, he did play him softer and did play him as if this was a man who'd really gone through a lot of shit and now was trying to be quiet and be good and be reformed and be, So there was part of that in there, but Lorcan kind of really went to that element of him, and we went with him. We said, actually, that's more powerful, that the guy is actually doing his best. He's actually, much calmer. He's not losing his temper, only, slight little glimmers of it. And that actually is sadder in a way. So actors come in and they play. The great thing is, actors come in, they see the character and they play the character and what you thought that character might be, but then they do something else with it that surprises you. And the good actors always do that, but they don't do something that's so surprising that it's not the fucking character. It is, but they do something else that just brings it alive. And Lorcan did that in spades, and there's a beautiful kind of vulnerability to that man, and an inability to really address what's really going on, and then until he's forced to. And there's a great scene between the two of them. Yes, I mean, we the girls where we had a kind of prototype of, we wanted one to be this type and a family woman, and then another who's a bit wilder, and another, and you don't need to be too specific, because actors come in, you'll know when you meet them sometimes, and then they all bring their own stuff to it anyway. So I never, as a writer, get too set about who I want. I don't imagine people when I'm writing, in a way, because it's more of an energy than a specific thing,
And tell me again about the different drafts that you guys did. So was everybody cast, if you're saying Zoom, presumably over COVID, or was that because it's in Kerry and everyone's scattered and Irish speakers are, you have to kind of go to the nooks and crannies to get them? Or, it's kind of about kind of piecing everything together, about going through the different when do the actors come on and when do they feed into the narrative, and does that change it ever so slightly?
Some of our actors were cast. Most of our actors were cast, I think, and we were still working on the script, because we left the script alone and we did a bit of work, and then quite late on we delved into it again. And like the Jenga, someone, we pulled out a piece, and the whole fucking thing came not crashing down, but kind of, oh my God, there's a big question to the answer here. And so we started to look again, but who was cast didn't really affect that. It was a story structure thing. It was really the nuts and bolts stuff. And then actors really came into their own when we got to Kerry. We had a week in Kerry before we started to shoot, and we were around the table and we were doing all that. And so then actors really came into their own, because again, you hear stuff and you can start cutting, because they don't need to say all that. They can just do it in whatever the look. And then the actors are very good at suggesting dialogue, and we rewrote quite a lot, all for the better, And then it was slightly complicated because I don't speak any Gaeilge. So there was an Irish language version of the script and an English language. So we'd read it in English, and then we talk about that, and then it would be translated, and then we talk about that. But it wasn't ideal, but it was okay. I mean, it worked.
So that's really kind of like an interesting take. Also, I'm just curious to so you're working on other drafts yourselves because of organically your notes, where you're feeling things are changing and shifting as a creative team. When I know you were a process, the whole scheme starts off like there's actually a number of projects going in. I'm just sort of wondering, you guys are changing it constantly yourselves. How many revisions did the Cine 4 scheme? Like, how did the external notes maybe affect the project? Because I know it's TG Cahir and Screen Ireland. Does everyone have a say, or is it just TG Cahir? Are you delivering?
Well, yes. Well, early on, like initially it was TG Cahir who gave back feedback. Because it was it's their scheme initially. So they gave feedback, and they're the ones who chose. They kind of do the choosing, as far as I know. and then it was in the latter stages that the film board got more involved. And Leslie Kim, who was a developing person in there at that time, was more involved with us towards the end of the process, and was actually very helpful, and really interrogated the script and made us make changes that I think are really helped. You know what I mean? That made us look at things, and then we had to come up with our own solutions to try and answer these questions, which I think we did, and everyone was happy with. So so there wasn't too many voices. You know what I mean? There wasn't everyone shouting at you at once, which is good. And again, we put pressure on ourselves a lot of the time to keep reading it and keep rewriting. And you know when something isn't quite right. You know, you just have the feeling. Although every fibre in your being wants to say that it's done, so you'd be finished with it. If there's a nagging voice at all, you have to listen to it and go back to the drawing board slightly, you know, and keep crafting it away until it's done. But a script is never done. I mean, it's always being worked on right to the last week with the actors, right to on the day sometimes, you know. So you have to be willing and open to be changing at all times and making it right, you know.
That is very interesting because like and even up to the edit, actually things can change, and subtext and meanings and focus can change so drastically in the edit.
Absolutely.
And, you know, and especially if you're saying kind of dialogue is changing here and there. Are you in that room? Do you get cuts as the writer?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, you're kind of over everything. I mean, I was down there for the 6 weeks. You know, we were there the 5 weeks. So I was either kind of around the set or not, or sometimes rewriting stuff for budgetary reasons. We had to change some scenes around. You know, there'd be always that kind of stuff going on, which would have a ripple effect. So you had to kind of rewrite small things. And, you know, so it's good to be there all the time, to be on hand, you know.
And I'm just curious because I know like they're very different mediums. Like you have written for TV, for theater. What do you have to sort of change your mindset a little bit because they are so different in form?
Yes, you do. Yeah, you do. You have a different. Well, you do and you don't. I mean, it's still the same process of trying to create believable characters and trying to go into a world in your head and all of that. But it is a different discipline. You know, if you're writing theatre, I mean, I write kind of monologue plays, which are more, you just sit down and it's more see what comes out of you. You know, it's much more kind of creative writing. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm a poet, you know. It's like kind of that. You know, or it doesn't. Whereas film writing is much more disciplined, and you're usually working with other people, and it's kind of plot point one, and it's all that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? And you write endless treatments. At least I do anyway. I like to have very, 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 very detailed treatments before I attempt a script. And so I take much longer over the treatment than I will over the script. The script I'll write in 2 or 3 weeks because the treatment has been worked on for about 3 or 4 months, maybe, you know.
Wow, that's
and I think with film writing, that's the way to go. Other people do it the opposite way, but I certainly think it saves time. I mean, you still have leeway to change things as you're writing, but I think a detailed treatment is the way to go for me anyway. Whereas other types of writing are more you plan a bit, but it's much more in the moment and you go with it, you know. But they're different disciplines, and that's why I like mixing it up like that, because it keeps you kind of fresh. And I think if you're only writing for the screen, number one, it takes so long to get anything made that you get frustrated.
Yeah.
So you have to be filling your time with other things and always be moving around, you know.
And just wondering, with regards to your slate as well, would you like, because I would consider you to be like, one of the most established kind of people with your area and your niche area with like a really established known playwright, but also that consistently has good screen projects across the line. And of various different tone, which is interesting. So I'm just because like I kind of go to you probably have more clout than the rest of the writers in that regards, that you can just say, if can you flip from kind of project to project and go, all right, look, I've got 6 things in development. This one is coming up. You know, this one is a theatre play. I get to kind of go to a retreat. Are you kind of at the whim of whatever gets funding at the next juncture?
Yeah, you're always at the whim of that, really, and who's interested in it, and what's the heat like on this one, and so and it's yeah, you never know what's going to happen, really. I think in the past sometimes you chase certain things that you need to just keep writing what you're interested in, you personally, and not chase something for the sake of it because it might be a better deal. If you know what I mean, you got to keep. I've learned that in the last while, that you just write what you want to write what's coming out of your own heart or whatever, and actually that will serve you better in the long run, and than taking up things that you're not as driven by. Do you know?
And is it tougher to do like screenplay treatments because there's so many cooks in the kitchen at the very beginning that things don't percolate individually? Or would you take people's input and then go and sort of let that ruminate and then bring that to it, like, or are kind of cooks in the kitchen continuously? Like, I'm just interested into how the process works.
Well, it depends on each project, kind of different. It depends on who you're working with and all that kind of thing. Because I mean, like the likes of Tarrac and working with Declan and Clíona and people like that who I know very well, that's much more. We can. I take on everything they say. I like working in the group like that. I like taking on notes. I like it because you're getting help from people you trust.
Yeah.
So it makes your life easier, And I think you need to, I mean, and whoever you're working with, I like to listen to people. Usually people are very good, Usually you're working with people who are very good, who are giving you good notes, and more heads are better, many heads make light work. You've got to make a choice ultimately yourself. And usually that's quite easy. You know what's working and what isn't. But I like to, certainly, the thing about film writing I do like is actually collaborating with people, and good people, and usually it's helpful. But you know what I mean. So I do like I like that spirit of it, and then again I like going away to the more solo stuff of playwriting and writing books. You know what I mean, which is much more you're on your own. You have an editor, but it's much more solitary type of thing. Whereas the film writing is more you're collaborating with people. And usually it's always to the betterment. If you, I mean, my policy in a meeting is never block things, never argue the toss over things. Just write everything down, take it all home, and then go through it, sift through it and see what's useful and what isn't. Sometimes things that you don't think are going to help you sometimes turn out to be the thing that does help you. So you always consider everything, even if you think it's shit initially. You never know. It may be shit, or there might be something in it. But I wouldn't dismiss anything.
And I suppose that's a kind of creative trust shorthand of finding collaborators. Like, would somebody sort of at your level, like, go, I do you know, like, I kind of think it's such an intimate process getting a project that's that difficult, that maybe you don't have huge development funding necessarily in the beginning. I know at this scheme you probably are getting kind of paid at every single thing, but like, if you get like that kind of one development scheme to get it to a specific level, but then you kind of do have to do a lot of like fundraising, and I presume you have to do bits and bobs on that. I'm just wondering, like, are you kind of open to starting new creative relationships, or is it sort of like marriage or dating where you're like, oh no, I'm just going to stick to this one person because I trust them? Or because I kind of think it's it's such an intense experience, and you care. Well, I presume you care because you're releasing work at such a high level. I'm kind of like using the collective you as creatives as well. Like care so deeply about a project and really like want it to do well, that sometimes when those relationships break down, they can be really stressful. So I'm just kind of curious to how you like develop those and maintain those creative relationships longer term.
Yes, well, I suppose it's I don't think I've ever really have I fallen out with anyone? Not really. Maybe I'm a Libran, and where's the phone? I tend to be able to listen to people on all sides, but I think you maintain them through. Sometimes, well, I think the main thing is you don't work with the same people all the time, and even with Declan, we won't be working with each other all the time. I mean, there might be a year where we don't do anything. We'll still be kind of talking about things, but we won't be kind of enmeshed in anything.
Yeah.
And I'll work with other people, and he'll work with other people.
And not every project is right for every person. Do you know, like some people might not always
absolutely
get into a specific type for whatever reason. Maybe it's not their wheelhouse, or they have their own sort of different thoughts about it, and then it isn't a fit. So I'm just sort of
that's true too. You have to be absolutely. I think you have to, like, I will. You'll always look around. You have a certain thing, and you go, who'd be interested in that? In terms of producers, or who would be good with that? Who would be able to carry that particular ball? And yeah, that definitely that would be a thing you do,
Yeah.
But I think it's just how you maintain the relationships. I think you just listen to it. It's like a good marriage, You just you just communicate. But I think it's about listening to each other and communicating. And if there is a problem, that you air the problem.
Yeah.
And get it and deal with it. It's like any kind of relationship, I suppose. And I think you find the relationships that really work for you by the ones that, in contrast to the ones that haven't worked as well.
Yeah.
You really appreciate the ones that do work then.
Yeah.
Because, and it's not the other person's fault or anything. It's just you're in the same wavelength. You work well together. It's a personality thing. It's whatever it is. It's an energy thing. And sometimes I've been with people who were perfectly very good and have gone on to have done very well, but just haven't quite fitted me, or I haven't quite fitted them. And that quite quickly, and you won't go back there. But you'll always go back to the people that you just can work with.
Yeah, and that gets you, I suppose, and get your work in
yes, exactly.
in a deeper way. Because, like, again, just some people don't have access to everything, and then you might not have, like you might not kind of fit with someone else's sort of idea or energy. But there is one thing that I thought was quite interesting. Do you, when developing, say, like Eden, which was just a spectacular show when it aired, as well as the theater piece, which was so strong, but again, there was such different forms, but so beautifully strong in their own way. When you're developing that and like basically adapting it from your own work, do you kind of feel like that's, kind of like your treatment done, your, your characters inside out? I mean, you've kind of lived with it at that point for so long. I'm just curious, is that something like a very different project to developing than something like Tarrac?
Yes, it is. Yeah, I mean, the good thing is that you do know the characters so well, but the bad thing is that you know them too well in a certain way, and they have to change because it's for the screen. So Eden was a monologue play, so these two people were talking constantly to an audience. They were confessing stuff to an audience or to God or to whoever. But on film, when you see them in the world, they're actually very quiet people. They don't actually talk very much. They only talk. They're only allowed talk in the theatre to us. So that was a kind of a challenge, and so we had to try and find more visual ways of portraying their feelings, of visualizing the internal what was going on inside them because they could not tell us on film, so that was quite a big challenge. I think the producer, David Collins, I remember he set me a task. He said, I want you to write the first 20 minutes of the film without any dialogue whatsoever. And then if we feel you're telling the story in a visual way that we can actually understand, then you'll be allowed a little bit of dialogue, So that was a very good exercise, actually. It was an artificial exercise, but actually it was a very helpful one. And but they were very different, very, very different. Monologue plays are so it's such a different format even to straight plays.
But you still have a really, like, what's very funny is obviously if whether it's an unconscious thing or not, there's a very strong arc and points back and forth in that play that is very structured. So like, I wonder, is that like you're unconscious doing it, and then maybe you have to very consciously do it for the feature film if you're working with other people, maybe just out of curiosity, is that?
Yes, I think the structure of Eden is quite, it works really well for the play, and that was completely instinctual. That just, I didn't really know what I was doing. I mean, I was an actor, and I was just writing this at nighttime, not really knowing what I was doing. But so that just came out kind of naturally, that we would have his point of view, and he would go on with the story a little bit, and then we'd have her point of view of the same thing, but then she would cover a new bit of the story. Anyway, whatever way it worked, it worked very well. And the film then couldn't really do that. We had to invent another structure for the film entirely. And also we had kind of fantasy sequences in the play where she had kind of quite hardcore sex fantasies that she was getting out of a book, and he was having fantasies set in a play. So in the monologue you could really go into that. In the film you could do that as well, but then it became a different type of film, and we felt that tonally it just did not work. So it was really like starting from scratch, I have to say, doing that film. It was like a different animal. It was like a different project altogether.
And did you have to kind of go in and go, okay, well, I'm going to do like my sequences or my 3-act structure, I'm going to kind of do like treatment after treatment for that as well? Or would it be something that you
yeah, no, totally. Yeah. No, you had to completely redesign it, really. You know what I mean? You had to go back and do all your screenplay, out with the screenplay book. Do you know? No. And well, I had a great script editor, writer called Lauren Mackenzie, who had done amazing work with me on Pure Mule and really taught me how to write telly. I had no notion what I was doing at the time. And she came in at times into the Eden development as well, and was very, very helpful with that, But it was you had to go back to the drawing board, really, 8 sequences. It's just a different language to the play,
Yeah, it's so interesting. Oh my God, sorry, I just saw the time. Thank you. I would honestly just pick your brain for hours and hours and hours, because I do think like that's so interesting. It's such a variety of works, and I do think like that kind of use of comedy, of that darkness, and in other projects as well, it's just very strong, and it speaks very much, I think, to like Irish sensibilities and a lot of like what's under the consensus of society that's unspoken, which I love, and I think this does tackle a lot of that as well. It's much sweeter, which is interesting. So I like, again, it's such a visually stunning film. It's great to see 4 women rocking it on a boat and women's sports being promoted. And just how have you enjoyed it? How's the response been?
It's been really great, and yeah, I think it's a generous film. I think it's a feel good. I think we watched a great Peter Yates film from 1979 called Breaking Away. It's 4 guys in a town, working class guys in a kind of college town, and they're into cycling. So it's a kind of sports movie about cycling. But really it's about these guys and their identity, and that was kind of one of the templates for Tarrac. And yeah, I'm very happy with the film. And Declan did great work. Paddy Jordan did great work. The cinematographer. There's a great soundtrack by Cormac, which I think really helps us. And yeah, no, I think I'm very proud of the film now, and it's good to hopefully people can try and see it on a big screen because it looks good.
And a great advertising for the Irish Tourist Board as well.
Absolutely.
Very scenic views.
Yeah.
That's fabulous. Look, it's out the 6th of October. So thank you so much for chatting with us.
Thanks a million. Thank you very much. That was great.